We're going to see how long and how much I contribute to this video log, but this is kind of a tutorial on what I'm learning in a class where we're trying to do a knowledge graph and knowledge engineering. So I'm going to do a brief overview of what I'm attempting to accomplish throughout this class, and then future videos will kind of go into the specifics. I'm going to brush over some of the stuff that I've already completed, but there's a lot going on with the AGE and Postgres and OpenCipher, so that's the stuff that I think a lot of the videos of my findings will be on. So to get started, my specific project is focusing on the company Adafruit. I developed a Python web scraper to scrape information from the Adafruit website as well as related websites like competitors and suppliers, etc., to pull specific information into a JSON lines file. So we're getting key value pairs, attributes. We'll look at what that looks like in this video. And then from there, we're basically creating a Python script that's going to load up, read the JSON lines files, load that data into Postgres SQL Server, specifically loading it into a graph database using the AGE, the Apache AGE extension, and that extension uses the querying language OpenCipher. There's a lot to unpack with that. It's just on version 1 when we're currently doing this in 2022, but that's the basic principle of what we're trying to accomplish right now. Hopefully we'll get into more specific data science things in the future, being able to utilize that knowledge graph. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to share was kind of my initial schema for what I think the graph is going to look like, at least right now before we've really loaded too much in. I'm really only going to focus in this video on the specific products because that's what I have the most tangible information from in the JSON lines file. So looking at this in the center here, we've got the blue Adafruit node, and this is going to kind of be our base starting point of all of the knowledge graphs. Everything will relate somehow to the Adafruit node. So Adafruit makes or sells a number of products, and it actually is an engineering and manufacturing company as well. So hopefully we're going to be able to figure out the difference between which products it makes and which products it sells that it gets from other vendors that are supplying it those specific products. And within the products, there's also relationships between the products. So product R could be related to product X. So this would be things like if you're buying a computer, potentially if you're buying a desktop computer, a related product would be a laptop computer. They're not direct competitors of each other, but a laptop and a desktop are very close to each other, so they are related to each other. The other relationship that we have is complementary products. So I imagine this best when I'm thinking about food. So if you go and buy hot dogs, if you're like me, a lot of times you will forget to buy the buns for the hot dogs. The hot dogs and the hot dog buns are complementary products. They don't compete with each other. They're not even really all that related. But if you're going to buy one, you're going to want to buy the other. And it's good to share those products with each other. This is the main piece that we'll probably focus on for what I'm talking about. But other than that, we also have other pieces, like we have rivals, so competitors, etc., however you want to say that. So Adafruit is a rival of other companies. Other companies make other products, and those products may compete with Adafruit products. The other rival companies may even sell the exact same product as what Adafruit does. This one's probably a bad example. I probably should have linked it to the cells, but potentially supplier S could supply both Adafruit and the competing company with the same product that both of them sell, but maybe company A sells it at a discount, or maybe they sell it for cheaper in the UK, but it's more expensive in the US. Those sorts of things would be what we would kind of look at for that. There's also, I'm not necessarily looking at the companies that make substitute products, but there's also substitute products. So product S could be a substitute for product Y. The best example that I have for substitutes is if you're in the automobile manufacturing world, you wouldn't necessarily consider that a manual bike riding company is a competitor of you. But in reality, riding a bike or driving in a motorized vehicle can accomplish the same thing, but you're definitely not in the same space for competing with each other. So a bicycle would be a substitute for a motorized vehicle, but really those companies don't directly compete with you in the motorized vehicle, industry. Then you also have Adafruit that sells to companies. So, and they also sell to individuals, obviously. That's the main selling point of Adafruit, but they've got a number of distributors that they sell to and a number of hackerspaces that they sell to. So those are kind of the big pieces that we're looking at. I didn't want to go down to the individual person level, but we could have done another node here that was sells to individual people as opposed to just companies. And then we also have potential new entrants, which could be a category. And I kind of already talked about the suppliers. And this one's unique in that I want to tag this company to note that it is a supplier of Adafruit, but I also want to know specifically what companies it supplies. And in the case where we have the information, it would be nice to know that if Adafruit sells to this company, what are the products that that company buys to actually sell itself or to utilize. So I think that pretty much covers the knowledge graph as I'm presenting it and planning on creating it. So that's the structure of that. Okay, for the web scraping piece, I'm going to go over this fairly lightly, but we were trying to, in the class, create a more generic web scraper. I've done some web scraping in the past, and it's not very easy to make a generic web scraper since every single website is different. So at least for the products piece of it, I did a very specialized web scraper, and I'm going to kind of walk through how I picked up the pieces that I needed and how I used Scrapy, the specific Python module, to decide what to pull it into a JSON lines file. So this was the initial website that I gave to Scrapy to run through. And within this website, we have categories. So new products, kind of special. I'm not going to focus on that because this was excluded from the specific scraping. But under the categories, you have categories like Circuit Playground, Feather, Raspberry Pi, Microbit, etc. This just kind of runs down the page, right? So what I was able to do is go in here, and I'm using Firefox specifically for this. I went into More Tools, and I went into Web Developer Tools. And between the inspector and this little icon that lets me pick an element on the page, I kind of was looking for specific things within the HTML, within the CSS, in order to be able to scrape specific parts of the page, since I didn't want the web crawler to go crazy. So I clicked on the selector, I went up here, and I was like, hey, new products, let's see what it looks like. And in this case, it's an href. It's /new, but new products wasn't one of the categories that I actually wanted. So it's like, okay, so that's /new, but I do want the Circuit Playground. So what does it look like? Okay, so in this case, this one is also in href, but this has a very specific structure. So it has /category and then /a number. Adafruit's website was surprisingly well structured to kind of understand how the back end probably works, in that I would say 956 is an ID number, and the specific category 956 corresponds to Circuit Playground. So in this case, I could actually really structure a sound relational database even just using this information here, potentially. But if I look, this one has category 965. If I go down here and inspect the next one, we're going to see that it has category 943. So all of these are going to be structured as hrefs. They're going to have a slash category in them, and they're going to have a number. And what I want the crawler to do is to literally loop through every single one of these, go to that specific category, and within that category, we're going to have individual products listed here. And I don't necessarily just want the summary information. I also want the crawler to go to each individual product. And on the product page, I'm going to have a lot of details that I'm going to want to scrape. So before we get to that, let's go back to this first one and see how I told Scrapy to only loop through all of the specific categories that it's looking for. So within the Scrapy folder structure, I've got a web focus crawler, and then within that, I've got a number of subfolders, but we're looking at the web focus crawler subfolder, and within that, we've got a spiders subfolder, and within the spiders, this is where I'm defining specific spiders for each of the specific things that I'm making a custom scraper for. So this spider has the crawler feature in it. It also has the scraper in it to download the information, and it also has the parser to parse the specific information out of it. I'm probably using these interchangeably, but those are the three real things that we're looking at: is the crawl, which websites do you go through, the scraping piece of it, which websites do you download. So in this case over here, I really don't care if I download this page because I'm not going to pull any information from it. Besides, I want to make sure that I'm storing which category I'm specifically clicking on. But other than that, I'm not scraping any information really off of this particular page. And I'm not really parsing. I don't want to parse this either. So that's where I'm at for that. Okay, so within this spider, if you'll look here, I've called out the specific website that it's going to start with. And in this case, this is pulling down every single product basically that Adafruit has. So really, I only needed this one website to start with. Okay, and then we're going to pass this into the requests, and we're going to send it to the initial pass. So I don't really understand how Scrapy works. A lot of this was just Googling back and forth, but I want to yield. I want to do a request. We're sending it the web page that it's actually looking for. And once it's returned that website, we want it to basically go to this definition initial pass. So I significantly edited the initial pass. In the initial pass, we're going to pass it itself and the response that it got from the URL. So this is going to be the actual HTML stuff that we can loop through. And in the response, I used XPath for everything because I found that to be flexible, that I had examples for. I think that there's either easier ways to read this, but and use other than XPath, but it worked for everything that I needed it to do, but it is clumsy. So I'm looking for all H2s. So it's going to start off and it's going to find an H2. After the H2, it's going to find an A, and it's going to look for the href within the A. It wants to make sure that this at least exists. So if I got a page failure, it wouldn't even find this specific reference tag. So if I go back and look at my inspector here, and I click on Circuit Playground, you can see that it has an H2 first, and within the H2 there is an A, and within the A there is the href specific attribute, and that's the specific thing that I'm looking for here. So if it finds this tag in the HTML, then I want it to loop through literally every single response that it gets there, that it matches H2, A, href, and we want to extract just the portion that's associated with the href. So the portion that's associated with the href in this case is going to be that slash category slash 965. Okay, and then once we've done that, we're going to look at that specific URL, And if the first part of it, once we've split it along slashes, is category, then we want to continue. So in this case, when we were looking at this new products, okay, let's go back to my inspector. So if I click on this, okay. So if we look at the new products, it does not start with category. If we split this on the slash, we're going to get new for that entry instead of category. So it will skip that because it'll fail this if statement. And then assuming that that happens correctly, then we want to pass this to Scrapy again, and we want to do the URL. And in this case, we want to pass it on to the product pass. So we did the initial query, which literally that just gives us the category that we're in. And then we want to, again, have the website go crawl to the next page and scrape that page. And in this case, we can use the URL from this page to give us a category ID. So we added the CBKW args, and it's a dictionary, and we're passing the category ID that we just gave to the next stage of the scraper, which is the product pass. Okay, so here in the product pass, we have the same thing that we had up here to where we have self and response, but we've also added in an additional category here, or an additional field that's the category ID that we got from the URL above. Okay, so now the next part of this is from this page. So we've made it to each individual categories page, and now we want to have the crawler crawl into each individual Adafruit product. So if I click on the inspector again, here we go, and we click on this. Now we're looking at what do we have here. So in this case, we have an H2. Just move things over a little bit. Okay, now we can kind of see both at the same time. So we've got, again, the H2 that we had before. We have the A, we have the href. Oops. Okay, getting ahead of myself a little bit. So the first thing that I want to get is the category. So we had already gotten the category ID from the URL, but the next thing that we want to get is the category. So in this case, it is the only H1 here that we have that has an ID. So we have an H1, an ID, which should be unique to the page, and we just want to return the text from that. So this will give us the circuit playground. That is also another attribute that I wanted to capture. So I've got the ID, which is the number, which is 965 in this case for this specific one. And then I also have the text that corresponds to that specific ID so that I can build my graph with those two attributes as well. Then once we've got the category, we want to loop through all of the individual products on this and go to the specific product page to be able to pull the products information. So again, in this case, all of the products are very similar to how all of the categories were. It's an H2 followed by an A followed by an href. We want to extract all of those. And again, all of them should, oh, I don't even have to do a check for that. So all of those on this page that are like that, we want to pass to the next part of the parser. So all of this, we've kind of parsed out a little bit of information, but for the most part, we haven't even really done the scraping part because we haven't stored any of these websites, but we're getting small pieces of information like the product category and the product category ID. But those are the only two attributes that we've actually parsed. So this last part will be parsing all of the information on the final product page. And we're passing in another attribute now, which is category. So if we look at the next product parse definition, we have the self, we have the response that we had seen before. We're getting the ID and the category name. And I'm just printing these so that when the program actually runs, I can see them. To make the program run faster, I probably should comment out that. And as you can see, there's a lot of prints that I was doing when I was troubleshooting this to try and figure out which specific attributes I needed to pull in. So this is where the actual So this is where the inspector is really going to be good. And we'll kind of go through each one of these in detail here a little bit. So I want the product name, I want the product ID, I want the product price, at least the Adafruit price, I want the product description, I want technical details if they have it, I want complement products if they have it, I want related products if they have it, and I want distributors if they have it. This whole piece gives me a lot to build up the graph, because this could be a list of related products, which then creates relationships between this product and those other products. Same thing with the complement products, same thing with the distributors. If this product is sold by other distributors, it allows me to create those connections because now I have that information stored for this specific product. Okay, so let's see how we figured out each one of these. Again, I'm relatively lucky with how well structured Adafruit's websites actually are. You'll notice that they all have classes or IDs for the most part that make it really easy to pull the correct information. So let's look at what we've got here. So we want the product name, right, which in this case is the Circuit Playground Classic. So let's click on my little pick an element piece. Okay, now it's changed. So this is the element that I want. So if I click on it, we can see that it has an H1, it has a class of product name large, and it looks like the website might have changed since the last time that I came here, but you'll notice that that class name should be the name that I'm actually looking for, but in this case it is product name large should have been what I was looking for. And then I want the text from that, and it's going to extract it. So if I was to rerun the scraper, which I luckily don't have to because I ran this before that class had actually changed, it will give me just the text that's for this specific name, although you'll notice now I need to update the actual class that's listed here. Okay, and then if we go down a little bit further, we can see that the product ID, again, has product, nope, there we go, product ID. So this one should be class product ID. And then within it, I don't want all of the text. I only want the text that's within the span, because you'll notice that all I care about is 3000. I don't care about the product ID piece. So it's followed by span, and then I want all of the text that's there, and that will give me the Adafruit product ID. Next, price. Okay, so within the product price, we want the div, we want the product price for the div, and I want to do the span, and I want to get the content from the span. So you'll notice that I'm going to have to do some cleanup after the fact for this particular entry for this particular site, but not all of them will have a strike through and not all of them will have a red. So I'm just going to get, in this case, a 1995 and a 1750 for both of those entries will be returned to this Adafruit price entry. Actually, no, it will just be the first one that's returned. So that is a slight issue that needs to be taken care of. So that's why we look through and we do multiple tests, right? So in this case, I was only returning the first entry ever in any of these, which in this case, I need to return both of them. And figure out which one is the correct price. But that's how we figure out what that one is. Okay, the next one here. So I want the description. So coming down here, here's the description. We're going to click here. We're going to click on this. But we don't actually want the H2 description because I don't care to read description that's going to be on every single one of these products. So instead, we care about the tab description content, which is what we have listed here. We care about what's in the p-value, which will be the paragraphs. And in this case, for the description, I'm going to loop through every single one of those and concatenate it all together. So each one of these p's will essentially give me a list of, here's the first one, here's the second one, etc., etc., etc. Okay, technical details. So if we scroll down a little bit here, This one actually has technical details. A lot of the products in Adafruit do not have technical details. So if I click here, we can see that this has technical details, and we want the technical details content. So if we come down here, we can see that we have tab, technical details content. Any of the p-values in here, we're going to get all of the text from it. Again, we're going to have trouble parsing through everything that's here, but it will let us figure out what all the information is here that we need. Okay, and next one is complement products. So that bottom part is the related products. This one does not have any complement products, it looks like. So the complement products would technically be listed over here, usually, and the related products are listed down here at the bottom. Okay, so that's how I went through and decided which specific pieces of information to grab. And as you can see, even walking through with this video, there's a lot to still clean up and pieces that are potentially missing and all of that. So it's just something to be aware of, that it's never going to be perfect and you're always going to probably have to make some changes. But I didn't want to have to do this after the fact. I preferred to try and get as much scraping done before I bring it into the JSON lines file, as opposed to just extracting all the text that's on this page and then having to parse it myself after the fact. Okay, some other things that we wanted to do is we want to extract the HTML for later use. So we're going to actually, again, this is the actual scraping piece of it. So we're going to download all of the just HTML part of the page to a specific folder. So that's what this is. And we're just going to write that information out to that file. We'll store it in a log. And then the last piece of this is making this into the JSON dictionary structure that we need. So we define an item, and this is the basic structure that I have for all items that are coming in. So I've got the URL where we actually captured the information. So that's the response URL. I've got the entity, which will hopefully be the unique name. So in this case, it's just the product name. The entity type that I'm defining specifically depending on what web page that I'm going to. So in this case, we're looking at a product. And then the text is just going to be any description that might provide more information. In this case, it's really straightforward. It is the product description. And then I have a catch-all dictionary for any other attribute that might be specific to, say, products, or might be specific to customers, or might be specific to competitors, etc. And that all goes under this attribute info. And then this is just a dictionary of all of the additional categories, attributes that I wanted to capture. In this case, you can see things like price, the product details. I do have a little bit of redundancy here. I wanted the product description spelled out specifically as product description as opposed to just text, etc. So that's what we've got. And then it returns this item, and then this is what basically gets written to the JSON lines file. So if we go ahead and take a look at the output of this particular one. So here we go. So let's look at each individual line. Each individual line is, as my computer tries to take off. So each individual line is a valid JSON format. And this is the information that we wanted. So the info URL, the entity, which is the actual name of the product, and then not the best text editor to view this in, apparently. Then you have the attribute information, like the category name, category ID, which it looks like that's not coming over correctly. The Adafruit product ID, the price, the description, and the other values. So that's the JSON lines file that we're getting. And then we're going to use this information to parse it and actually send it over to the document database. So yeah, that's the main thing that I wanted to share in this first video was the scraping piece of it, the pain of figuring out how to scrape, what pieces need to be scraped, kind of et cetera, for that sort of stuff. So yeah, I will leave it there and be expecting another video going over what we've learned about the specific AGE stuff. So I think we'll look at that next. Thanks.